Hello, everyone. This is Kelvin bringing you another Teach Kelvin Your Thing session. So, in this session, we are going to be looking at an amazing UI framework, and we have also an amazing guest to show us that framework. So, can we all welcome Esther? How are you doing, Esther?
Hi, Kelvin. I'm very fine, thank you. How are you doing too?
I'm awesome. I'm really glad you took out the time to come on this session to teach me something really, really interesting. So, before we get into what that something is, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Esther. I work as a developer advocate at Chakra UI. I'm also a technical writer. So you see me creating content in form of YouTube videos, in form of technical articles. I have a blog on dev.co, and I recently created a course called Chakra UI for Beginners. So you can check it out at chakrauiforbeginners.com. And yeah, thanks for having me here.
Awesome, awesome. I guess you gave out a little bit of what we're doing currently, a bit in your intro, but that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Spoilers are
Yeah.
allowed here. Okay,
hmm
so you said you were a technical writer, now you are a developer advocate at Chakaya. So, which one came first? Technical writing or
Uh,
web development?
I think okay, web development came first, right? My first job as a techie was as a front end engineer, so web development came first, and somewhere along the line, I got interested in technical writing, and yeah, I got to learn more about technical writing and started writing articles. So yeah, and after that, I kind of transitioned into being a developer advocate.
Awesome. I think I have the same storyline. Okay, maybe for me, web development came first, then I still do technical writing. So I think maybe it's just me, but both of them kind of feed each other. So when you write more on the things you're learning, you get to know them well. And when you teach what you're learning, you're helping
Yeah,
others learn, and it's just kind of like a very nice, virtuous circle. I like it.
exactly.
Cool. Awesome. So, yes, so okay, so I did mention you'll be teaching me something today. So what are you teaching me?
Okay, so today you said I had given out a bit of it right in my
Yeah.
intro, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll be learning how to build a landing page with Chakra UI. So we'll be building a planet scale landing page, part of it,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how far we're able to go with time.
Okay.
And I'll be showing you the really amazing features of Chakra UI.
Nice. Okay, so I think a good place to start. I know what Chakra UI is, of course. So maybe our audience don't know. So can you just like give like a 5 minutes intro to what Chakra UI is, benefits, and just general introduction of the framework, please?
Oh yeah, Chakra UI is a UI component library, right? So it's available in both React and Vue for now. And I'll be shining more light on the React part because I'm a React developer. But I would say Chakra UI gives you the building blocks you need to be able to create websites and web apps faster with speed, and it gives you accessibility out of the box. So I can say all Chakra UI components are accessible, and by a UI component library, let me try to break that down a bit. So I always like to explain that with the button component, right, or the button. When you have to create a button from scratch, if you're using just CSS, you probably need to create a div, right, and then give it some dimensions and give it some background color, font size, and maybe border radius and all of that, right? But doing this could be a whole lot of work, especially when you have to create more complex components. But Chakra UI already has things like button out of the box. So you have a button, you can style it as you want. You have variants of the button, and you even have button is just one in a whole lot of other components. You have layout components like box, flex, that we are going to be using in building our landing page, and you have other data display components and all of that. So that's what Chakra UI really gives you. You know, you're able to build with speed when you're working on a project.
Nice. Awesome. So yeah, I think you did a really good job giving like an intro to what Chakra UI is. So I'm a bit
hmm
curious from your perspective as a dev advocate with Chakra UI. How does
Yeah.
it compare? with, let's say, Tailwind CSS, for example. I think Tailwind is popular. I also use Tailwind. So I think my question is, as a web developer,
Mhm.
when will I reach for Tailwind CSS and when do I reach for Chakra UI from your perspective?
Okay, that's actually a very interesting question. I see that a whole lot of people in the tech space front end, there's been some battle between Tailwind, CSS, and Chakra, and that is really fine, right? But for me, I would say they do two different things. They may be similar, but Tailwind is used for styling, basically, right? At the moment, I don't think it can help you build styled components so fast. So I would say if you want to maybe just get along with building a landing page or maybe just a simple blog, you can probably just use Tailwind, put some classes on your elements, and you're good to go. But Chakra UI gives you components, so styled components, right? It's not just styling like background color and things like that. You have the components already built for you. And even when you want to build like a design system, for example, Chakra UI is a very good foundation where you can, lay for a design system for maybe your company or for whatever project you're working on. So Chakra UI gives you the good foundation to develop something like a design system. So these are two different instances that I would say you can use, either Tailwind or Chakra depending on your use case. For me, I love Chakra UI and yeah, it works well for my like
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah. So I think what they're saying is like with everything with web development, it depends. So if you want to have like the building blocks
Yeah,
already done for you, reach out for Chakra UI. But if you like low level, like okay, yeah,
exactly.
you chat for Tailwind. I like it. That's perfect. That it's a very clear distinction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so are you
Cool.
ready? And before we start, let's ask
Uh,
the demo gods to bless us so demo goes well. You
yeah,
ready?
hopefully, please.
Okay.
I guess I'm ready. And let's
Uh,
see if
okay.
if you cite anything, you can just call my attention to it, and we'll see how we can fix it and just get our project running.
Okay. Perfect. So, all right. So, this is a perfect segue for me to move to sharing your screen. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Nice website.
All
The
right.
Chakra UI
So
website.
this is the Chakra UI website, chakra-ui.com. So I will just be walking you through some of the things that we already discussed in terms of why Chakra UI is unique and why a whole lot of developers love it. I would say one thing that stands Chakra UI right is the
Mhm.
style props. So when you talk about developer experience, a whole lot of people want to just style their components in line. They don't want to have to spend time to create a style sheet somewhere and then start using class names and all of that to style components. They just want to get done with styling their components inline, and that concept is called style props. So that's one of the things that stand Chakra UI, the fact that you can use style props to style your components. So the first thing I want to show us here is the PlanetScale website also. So this is the landing page that we'll be developing, right? Um, let's see how far we can go, but we'll be working on the navigation bar, this part here, then the header and logo grid and all of that. And while we're working, I know there's a whole lot of animation going on in the background here, but for the purpose of this demo, we're just going to work on the landing page as it is without any animation, and even things like this background as well. We're just going to give it a solid color, like a black color, and focus on laying out elements and building elements and components in Chakra UI. So I guess we can get started. I have
Awesome.
my project here. This is VS Code. Yeah, I have my project here. It's a Next.js project, and I've gone ahead to install Next.js and put some of the assets we'll be using so I don't waste time trying to inspect the PlanetScale site, get things like their logos and all of these icons here. So I have some of them already set up in my components file, or components folder. So I have all of these logos here. So what we need to do right now is to install Chakra UI. And for that, since this is a Next.js project, you're just going to click the Next.js guide. Chakra UI gives you different guides depending on your framework. So we're going to use the Next.js. I'm going to copy this yarn command, which is here. Then we go to our terminal right here. And then we paste this and press enter. So there are a couple of dependencies that come with Chakra UI, such as emotion and frame emotion. So this is what lets you use Chakra UI optimally. So whenever you want to use Chakra UI, just install it as it is. So give you some time to complete the installation process. And yeah, it's done. So that's the first step of getting Chakra UI to work in our project, installing it. And the next thing we want to do is to set up the Chakra provider, right? So Chakra provider is set up at the root of our project. So I'm just going to copy this right now. And for Next.js, the root of our project, we'll find it in underscore app.js, right? So we're not going to be using our global.css since we are using Chakra UI right now. So I'm just going to copy all of this here and just paste in what I copied from Chakra UI website. So this step is very important. So it's a two-step, and depending on your framework for Next.js, you have to always wrap your Chakra provider around the component, the root component. So now we have Chakra UI working, and yeah, so let's start building our UI. This is where I need the gods to help me. Okay,
Demo guys are
so
gonna help.
when
Mhm.
yeah, definitely. So now we have our nav bar here. So when we look at the nav bar, we can see that um, these are navigation links, right? These are all navigation links. And this is also a navigation link, and this is a button. So the first thing we want to do is to be able to develop that. So let's go to our components folder and create a new component called navbar. So I'm using just JavaScript for this whole demo. So just a minute. On my navbar, I'm going to just create a function here. Yeah. So now we know that this is a box. This is it. Like there's a div wrapping all of this. So I can go ahead to just render the box component from Chakra UI. So once I type box, you can see that it's telling me to import box from Chakra UI. So I just press enter and that gives us the box component, right? And since this is a navigation, I want to be able to. So I'm also focused on rendering the correct HTML element, right? So instead of just making it a box, I'm going to say box as nav. So this helps us when we are rendering the elements in the DOM, right?
Yeah.
So now, yeah, so now we want to also go back and see what else do we need. We can see that in terms of layout, we see that there's an H stack, meaning that the icon and the nav elements or the nav links, they're all horizontally stacked together. So I'm going to install the HStack components from Chakra UI. This helps us to be able to horizontally stack elements and apply some form of uniform spacing between them. Okay, so let me just make sure it's imported correctly. Cool. So now what we need to also do is import, because they are nav links, we're going to be using Next.js link item or link component rather. This is because Next.js link allows us to easily route between pages in an app, right? So I'm just gonna I'm just gonna import next link from Next.js. Let me see. Let me import it at the top here. It's called next link from Next.js link. Yeah. So this is what will allow us to be able to easily route elements for our navigation. And then we go over to, we know that for our link, we want it to look like this, meaning that we want to be able to style our link, right? So what we need to do in that instance is to import link from Chakra UI. So when we import link from Chakra UI, the link from Chakra UI will help us to be able to style our navigation or any link the way we need to style it using style props. For Next.js link, we can pass href to it to be able to pass, the anchor link that we need. So I'm just going to install Chakra UI's link component here. Yeah. And then I'm going to pass href. And I'm also going to attach an href. And for now, I'm just going to give it that. So now that we have Chakra UI's link, this is where we're going to start styling the navigation links. So we have docs, CLI, enterprise, pricing, and blog. So let's put docs here, right? Now we need to be able to apply. Let's first off, let's start our local host to be able to see what exactly we're doing. So let me start the local host server. Okay, so I have hi here. I initially put hi as the in the index.js. So now we want to be able to, let's get the navbar that we created. Am I exporting it? Let me export it. Yeah. So let me just render navbar so we see every single thing that we are working on and it's not looking like magic. Cool. So we have our docs here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so we still have a couple of things we need to fix. Let's go back to navbar. Then we realize that first off we need to give the entire nav a background color. So let me just look for my PlanetScale site. I think I've closed it, so I'm just going to open it here. Yeah, so I'm just going to give this entire navigation a background color of black. So with Chakra UI, I mentioned style props, so we can just give it a BG instead of writing background color, right? And we're going to say black. Cool. So we can see we're already having, our nav take shape and all of that. So now we want to also be able to give the color, which is the color of the text. We're just going to use a white for now. That means our docs is now white instead of the dark color that we had there. Now we want to be able to let me see the things we need to do. Based on the PlanetScale website, we can see that when you hover on it, right, there's an orange color that comes up. So we're going to give this, so Chakra UI allows you to be able to add some pseudo properties, which we call Sudo Props. So to use Sudo Props, we're just going to use hover, right? And we put the properties we want to style in like an object. So that's why we have that extra parentheses, whatever you call them. I don't really know what they call them.
Yep.
So yeah, so we want to be able to give on hover, we want the color to become orange dots, maybe. Okay, so orange dots, a particular color in Chakra UI also. Let me show you. There's something that it does for you. So when you're working with colors, for example, if you look at the default theme object, right? A whole lot of colors. So instead of having to maybe start looking for a hex code of a color, for example, you can just check here and Chakra UI gives you different colors depending on how deep or how light you want the colors to be. So instead of inspecting PlanetScale website to get the particular shade of orange, we are just going to do something because over time we're just going to, see, okay, I think this looks more like orange to 600, but either ways, if you have a hex code, you can put it. If you want to use Chakra UI's default theme colors, you can use it as well. So for now, we're going to stick Chakra UI's default theme colors and just put orange to 600. And we see an hover, right? It's taking shape. So let's add a bit of more. Um, let's add a bit of more styles to our navigation, right?
Okay.
So we can see based on PlanetScale, it's a bit bold, right? It's not just light like what we have. So that is font weight. So we're just going to put font weight as bold, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then yeah, so we're having it take shape. So now it's in an H stack, and we want to be able to render other navigation link items, right?
Yeah.
So instead of what will I say? How do I explain this? Instead of just laying it all out and trying to give all of them maybe a padding left and all of that, H stack allows you to be able to pass in a uniform spacing between these elements, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can um, add in docs CLI. You probably see that this is not good practice because I'm repeating it, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
still going to refactor all of this code here. I'm just trying to make sure that we are not missing anything in this walkthrough.
Cool.
Mhm. Let me see. It's kind of beeping me. Okay, so Next.js link is beeping me. I think I missed a closing tag somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
mm,
So let me see. Why is it start beeping me?
yes, you also missed the very first one. After you close the
What?
link, you have to have like the close of the next link. The first one, the docs link.
Okay, okay, I missed.
The yeah
Okay,
yeah
okay,
yeah. So I think you also missed for
okay.
the rest.
Missed. Okay,
Yeah
that
yeah.
means I didn't have it when I copied it actually.
Yes yes. So that's
Okay,
that. So that
okay,
fixes it.
awesome, awesome. Okay, so let's see what we have here. The spacing is a lot, so I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to reduce the spacing to about 10.
So
Yeah.
okay.
So it's still a bit, but we're going to adjust that. So right now, let's bring in our planet scale. Let's bring in our planet scale logo that we have here, right?
Yeah.
So to bring in our planet scale logo, I told you that I have it in logos.jsx. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the first thing, and we're exporting it. So we're just going to render it first here, right?
Okay.
We're going to use icon in Chakra UI. Chakra UI allows you to be able to use the icon component. Either, I would say, either build out a custom component, which is what we have here, or if you want to use a third-party component library, like maybe React icons and things like that. So
Okay.
for now, let's import icon from Chakra UI. Yep. So we're going to use the as prop and say that we want our icon to be as the planet scale icon or
Oh,
planet scale logo. Yeah, so you can just use this and render it here.
interesting.
Yeah,
That's really
really
handy.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So we also check it out and see that okay,
Wow.
let's try and inspect the planet scale site
Mm-hmm.
and see the size. If I can see the size, maybe if it has a flex, font size. Okay, so it has a font size of 20 pixels, and in Chakra UI, that's about Aqua UI uses themes like theme tokens. So instead of hard coding it as 20 pixels, you can probably just use extra large. So we more or less ensure that different sizes of fonts have their tokens that you can use. So two extra large is 24 pixels, right? And the more you increase the size of the token is the higher it is. So you can check all of that in the theme, default theme objects on Chakra UI's documentation.
Okay.
So for now, we're just going to leave it as extra large, right? Yeah. So now we need to do a couple of cleanup to ensure that our site is looking really beautiful, right? So we notice that in terms of the layout from here, there's not much space, so we need to give um, our component a bit of padding between the top and the bottom. So we can just put py as maybe 4. See what happens. Okay, so that's a lot. So let's make it 2. Awesome. In Chakra UI also, py is padding at the top and bottom, right? So you can use that to put some styling between your items. So now we need to do a bit of cleanup here because one, this is looking really big. It shouldn't be as big as this. And two, we need to have some other components here or some other nav links here, like the sign in and the button. So let's work on that right now. So, okay. So to fix that, I mentioned earlier, right? So let me take it step by step. I mentioned earlier that this is wrong practice to have to repeat the same components over and over again. So as much as possible, when you're developing, you want to ensure that um, when you see you're repeating, right, you want to ensure that you have a component separate and maybe you pass props or you map over that component, map over maybe an array to reuse that component. So right now, instead of having docs, CLI, and all of this, we're just going to go ahead to create an array of this nav links. So I can call it nav links. Just going to go ahead to create an array of the different objects. So the first is we can have like a label key. So for the label is docs, and then we can also have a link, which is going to link to docs. For now, it's just going to be a dummy placeholder, right? So we're going to do this for the rest of the navigation links. Need to put a comma here. Okay, so let's make this CLI and let's make this enterprise pricing and blog. Okay, are you still with me?
Very much.
Awesome, cool. So just separated the navigation into an array so we don't need to repeat as much as possible. So right now, we're also going to create a component called like Nav Link component, right? And this component is what we are going to map over our array and just render all of this data in. So we're going to create a component called Nav Link. And yeah, so we're going to copy all of this since this is a single component, right? We're going to copy it here. And then we're going to, since we're going to be changing the children, we're just going to destructure children and pass it as prop here. So let me see what else we need to do. I think that's basically it. So now we need to be able to render the navigation link items that we've already put up. So I'm just gonna remove all of this, right?
Okay.
We have our icon, which is cool. And then we're going to render our, so I'm going to be flexing I'm going to be flexing them, right? So we know we had an H stack that was wrapping all of this.
Yeah.
To render each of these navigation, I'm also going to use a flex so that I can use a justify content as space between each of these items. So
Nice.
I'm going to flex them. Yeah. So I'm going to flex them. Okay, I need to import flex at the top. Yeah. And then I'm also going to render an H stack. Yeah. So the H stack is for this. The flex is actually for this entire. The H stack is for this doc, CLI, and enterprise, and all of this. The flex is for this entire div right here. So I'm going to be flexing these two together, right? So just follow me and stick along with me, right? So now we know that our navigation links, instead of just leaving them as random elements like maybe a div and all, we want to make sure that they are semantically correct.
Mm-hmm.
So this H stack, we're going to render it as an unordered list because in actual sense, all of these are list items, right? They're not
Mm-hmm.
just links, they are list items. So then we're going to render an li, which is a list item, right?
Yeah.
And this is where we're going to map over. So we're going to map over our nav links. Or yeah, I think we named it nav link, right?
Yes, we
Let's
do.
map. Yeah. So we're just going to select an item. Yeah. And then we're going to render the nav link component we created at the top. Cool. So now it's throwing an error. Sorry, this was supposed to be here.
It's okay. Okay.
Yeah, this was supposed to be inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now it's throwing an error because there are a couple of things. First off, we need to put a key. So we need to put a key on our list item because if you're mapping, right, the key helps us be able to identify them individually. So
Okay.
we're just going to put a key. That's part of why it's throwing an error.
Mm-hmm.
And for this, we're going to call it an item.link since
Okay.
that's a unique part of the nav link, right?
Cool.
So you can see it's no longer throwing an error. And then the nav link is an opening and closing tag because I remember we gave it a children prop at the beginning here.
Yeah.
So for this, in between the tags, we're going to give it item.label, which is actually the link, I mean the label for each of the navigation
Mm-hmm.
links. So we're going to have item.label, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the last thing we need to do is to be able to pass our href. So these are links. So the href helps us with our anchor tags, or anchor links. So we need to be able to pass our href and then make it item dot. I think we called it link.
Yeah.
Yeah. So far, let's see what we have so far. Awesome. So now we can see a problem here, right?
Mm-hmm.
They look good, but because we render them as list items, they come with like a bullet point. So let's just ensure that it doesn't have a list style type, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me see, how do we do that? Um, okay, so in this link, right? Let me see, list style type. Let's put it as none. See what goes on. Mm.
Okay.
So let me see how I can fix that because okay, yeah, I think I'm supposed to put it on the H stack. Yeah,
Okay. Oh
I was
yes,
put it
yes,
on the H
because
stack.
it's the
Yeah,
UL. Yes, got it.
yeah, that's the UL
Mm.
exactly. So now we can see that the it's no longer showing, and then I would also like us to I think this is too big. It
Yeah.
should be smaller. It should be smaller. So let's give it a font size of, I think we need to attach a font size here. Mm, maybe medium. Does it affect here? No, it won't affect here. Mm, small. Did it go smaller? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I think it did.
Let me see.
Oh,
Okay. Okay, I think it did. It went small a bit.
mhm,
It went small a bit, yeah. So next thing we want to focus on is to build out the right hand side. I know at the moment there's no padding. I'll put that when we are done building, right? Like the
mhm.
padding, horizontal padding. So let's go ahead to build out the this sign in, get started. So for this, we notice that it's still the same elements, like these two are the same elements, right? So it's also a nav link that I've already created. So let me just drink some water here.
Yeah, go ahead, have it.
I feel like I've been talking and talking and talking.
Yes, you
Okay.
need to hydrate.
Yeah,
Mm,
definitely. All right. So I mentioned that this flex was supposed to be wrapping this entire div, right?
mhm.
So we're going to put a justify content, which is justify a short form in Chakra UI, and we're going to say space between, so that when we add the other, you can see how it relates together, right? So now we can add a, let me see, we can add an H stack. We need to put an H stack, which is the wrapping container around all of this. You know that sign in and this button are horizontally stacked together, else get started will be underneath the sign in. So we're just going to put an H stack, and then the first element there is the nav link, which is what we've already created, and then this is sign in here, right? So this is what we have here. So right now it's together because we need to be able to assign a flex one. So flex one, I think, helps them to be, helps um, flex one on this element here on line 33 is going to more or less help the elements, that's a flex item, to take the let's say the remaining space. So, okay, let me see how I can explain. You can see that all of this is shrink together, right? But when we apply a flex one, it's going to allow these items to space themselves, and the children do not need to struggle for space. So
Oh,
let's see what we can do here.
nice.
So this is what I was trying to explain. This is what I
Oh,
was trying to explain, right? So
yeah,
applying a flex one to all of this would more or less give some spacing between those flex children. So
yes,
that's what flex one does. Yeah.
cool.
So now let's start the button. So Chakra UI has inbuilt button already. So I just imported that, and then let's put get started. So we notice that there's a lot of things going on here. First is this is not looking good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that this button looks as close as possible to what we're designing or what we're developing. So first things first, we need to be able to give a background color, or let me see, you need to be able to give the button a variant color rather, or a variant. So in Chakra UI, there's a concept called variant, right? Variant is the style of the button. So we have a solid variant, which is what we saw earlier. We have an outline variant, which is what um, this PlanetScale. So an outline variant more or less means that there'll be emphasis, there'll be a borderline, a border color here. So this is an outline variant in Chakra UI. So you see it's already taking shape, right? But there are a couple of things. When we hover, the style gets distorted. We want to make sure that when we hover, only the border color changes and the text is the same thing. that is, the text remains white. So let's use the pseudo property hover on our button. So first off, we want to make sure that the background color stays as transparent. That is, we don't want any color to show like how it's showing, which is what we have now, right? Then next, we want to ensure that the border color is white, right?
Nice.
Yeah, and now that means that when we by default the border color should be orange, maybe orange dot 600, because when we hover we want it to be white. Can you see?
Yeah.
So by default we need to put this border color, which is border color of, and say orange dot 600, which is like my favorite token color.
Oh, got
So
it.
this is what we have so far. So right now, there's one more thing we need to do, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that, this button is going to be like, even though we are styling it as a button, in actual sense, this button is actually a link, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a button is something that maybe semantically, a button is more or less an element that allows people to take action. Like when you're done submitting, when you're done filling a form, you want to submit, you click a button. But if you just want to maybe go to another page, it's a link, but physically it looks like a button, right?
Yeah.
So let's fix that. So what we're going to do is, instead of having it as a button, like I mentioned, we're just going to say button as an anchor tag, which is A, right?
Nice.
Yeah, and then we're going to wrap this button with Next.js's link, and this will help us be able to, easily route between pages. So we're going to wrap the button in Next.js link. Cool, and then so that Next.js doesn't scream at us, anytime you use Next.js link, you always have to pass an href,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to pass href as a prop.
Nice.
Let's see what we have. Physically, you would not see any difference, right? It's just when you're checking the DOM and inspecting the elements that you notice that this is the actual HTML element you need to use for the
Nice.
components. Yeah, cool. So the final thing we want to do is put some horizontal padding between the navigation items. So let's see. Let's see if we do px as 6. Let's see what that does for us. Okay. So I think padding, instead of having horizontal padding, I think it makes sense for us to actually have a maximum width, right? Because if we have to put a px, we'll probably go as wide as maybe 48 pixels, and this is not so good, right? And we still need some space. So instead of hard coding those values, how about to make a maximum width? So we say on large screens, we want this to be maybe 7XL or 5XL, which is Chakra UI's default or token value in terms of maximum width.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that we've given our background color, this box, we have it as a background color of black. Let's then create a new box that's going to wrap. So it's this box that's going to wrap the entire navigation link items that we created. So this box is where we'll be placing our maximum width on, right?
Yeah.
So we're just going to say maximum width. Um, On base screens, let's say that the maximum width is extra large, meaning that on base screens, so there's something that Chakra UI does in terms of responsiveness. Chakra UI allows you to, ensure that your elements are responsive or your page is responsive by passing either an array syntax or a base syntax. So I'm going to be using the sorry, on object syntax. I'm going to be using the object syntax in this demo. So on object syntax, when we say base, that is on every screen size. So let me do something. You have medium, which is like screen sizes that are maybe tablets and iPads. You can set a maximum width there. And then we have on large screens, which are like desktop screens, large monitor screens. You always need to set a maximum width. So see what happens now. Notice that this is very squashed. Now we need MX Auto, which allows us to be able to. MX Auto means margin auto, meaning that, sorry, MX Auto means the margin on a horizontal plane, meaning that we want to set it to auto. And when you set it to auto, it just
Just autos
centers
it.
all the elements. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So cool. So now this is what we have so far,
Beautiful.
which is, yeah, it's taking shape, but I need to just see why these font sizes are big. So just give me some time. Let me see what's going on here.
Okay.
So when that happens, we just need to inspect and see where this size is coming from.
Okay.
Okay, showing us 14 pixels here, but it's showing really wide. It's showing really large here. Do we have a font size? Mm, Just let me see. If I take out this, what happens? Hmm. At the moment, I can't seem to figure out why it's showing that way, but let's continue. Let's move along. So now we've been able to complete the navigation bar, right? I think the only thing is figuring out why it's this big in
Yeah,
terms of the font size.
I think I know
Yeah.
why. So if you go back to the
Okay.
code, you know, in you are passing font size to the hashtag 14 pixel, which is applying
Mm-hmm.
for the right
Mm-hmm.
hand nav, but for the other hashtag that have the sign in link, there is no font size in it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So more or less I need to pass.
yeah.
Okay. And another thing I need to do is when I'm using HStack, it's very good to, even though it comes with its default spacing, it's good to
Mm-hmm.
also use the spacing props. So when you're using maybe HStack or VStack,
Mm-hmm.
you can apply some spacing. So let's just apply some spacing between these two.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now we have the um, get started button,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of applying all of these font sizes, for now this will make do, but I think there should be some way to just apply it. So maybe
Yeah.
whole the
Yes.
parent
Yeah.
component so that we don't have to, yeah,
Um.
so we
Yeah.
don't have to keep applying it.
Yeah. That works.
Yeah, awesome. So let's move along and create the next component, which is the header component. This is like what makes me love this landing page so much, right? So
Nice.
now I mentioned that we're going to ignore this whole background gradient going on. We'll be working on this text gradient, but all of these grids and all, we're just going to use a solid black color.
Okay.
So let's go ahead to create a header component in our file. You need to remember to always export. Awesome. So I always just go ahead to import box as the first thing from Chakra UI because you most likely always use a box component in your components. So now we have our header. Let's go ahead to render it in our index.js. We can see exactly what we're doing. So back to Heather. The first thing is let's add a background color. I don't think this should take us as much time. So let's add a background color of black. And then let's start building. We notice that this heading, the database for enterprise, we're just gonna choose one. We're just gonna choose the database for developers, right? But we notice that this heading, this text, and this button, they have more or less similar spacing between them. So the spacing between here and here is almost the same thing, and the spacing between here and here, this text and the button is almost the same thing. And aside that, they're also at the center of the screen, right? So they're not maybe at the beginning or at the end, they're at the center. So that tells us that we need to use a VStack component in Chakra UI. So a VStack component in Chakra UI literally applies uniform spacing between the elements and also applies a flex align center, right? So it makes the elements at the center of the screen. So let's go ahead to use the VStack. Yep. So now we want to add in the heading components. Chakra UI allows you to use heading, so it more or less just renders heading. By default, if you don't pass the type of heading like H1, H2, H3, it's just going to give you H2. So because this is like the first heading in our landing page, we need to render it as an H1, right? So now we notice that let's add all of this, the database for, right? So the
Nice.
next thing we need to, yeah, cool. The next thing we need to do is build this part that has some gradients, right? So for that, we're going to use a span, but if we use just the, let's say the native HTML span, we won't be able to style it using Chakra style props. When you want a component to look, maybe have a physical attribute to look some type of way, but you want it under the hood to be maybe an HTML element, use the as prop. Remember how we use as prop for our button when we said button as a? It's something similar we are doing here. So if we just use box, if we just use the box component and put developers here, you notice that this is going to be on another line, right? But we want it to be on the same line. Let me just make this, give it the color of white. So you want these developers to be on the same line. You don't want it chopped off. So to do that, we're going to assign a span to this box and say box as span. Awesome. So the way we've separated it now, we are able to then style our span based on these beautiful gradients that we have right here. So we're going to inspect this to get the actual gradients that um, we can see on this site. Yep. So this is the gradient and we're going to copy it right here. So now we have our box and we have our span, right? So in Chakra UI, to use a gradient like a text gradient, you use the prop called BG gradient, which is background gradient, and then use a background clip text. So to make that, for you to understand what I mean, what we need to do is background gradient here. And you know we've already copied the gradient, so we just paste it. Probably okay, so right now you can see that it's applying to the background instead of the text. So to get it fixed, we need to then apply a BG clip, and we want it to be clipped on text. So this is what we have here.
Nice.
So yeah, it's looking really beautiful already.
Yeah.
Now we need to work on the um, we need to work on the size of our font. So instead of having it as H1, instead of having it just as this default size, is really big here, right? So I've gone ahead to inspect all of this before now. So we're going to use our font size as 8XL, which means it's really large. Let's see what that means in Chakra UI theme. 8XL is 6 rem. So with 6 rem, I always use pixels to rem to convert it to pixels. So we say 6 rem, that's 96 pixels, right? So we check it out, it's really, really big. So let's see what exactly is going on in PlanetScale land. Um, it's 96 pixels, and then 96 pixels, it's, sorry, 6 rem. Let's bump it down a bit to 7XL. Okay. So now what we want to do is to ensure that it is not spanning the entire width of our screen, right? We want to ensure that the width is restricted to maybe there's some padding on each side. So for that, we're going to apply a maximum width to our heading. Yeah, then apply a maximum width. And to apply maximum width, even for the font size, I might still get to it. I always love to work on my responsiveness as I'm going. So I can just say on base screens, I want the width to be large. On medium screens, I want the width to be extra large. And on large screens, I want the width to be 2XL. Should be in a string. Cool. So now we notice that the text is not center aligned, right? So we need to put some text aligned. And knowing that every single thing on the PlanetScale side is text aligned center, instead of applying the text aligned to our heading, we're going to apply it to our parent element, which is the VStack. Cool. So right now, I'm just going to reduce this font size a bit. I'm so big. Yeah, and let me see. Okay, I think I should leave it at 6XL. Cool. So let's go ahead to complete the building of the rest of the components quickly because our time is running. Whoa. Okay. So now let's copy this and we are done with our heading. VStack, I'm just going to put a spacing of, let me see, 8 pixels. 8 pixels is actually 8 times 4, which is, or this 8 token is 8 times 4, which is 32 pixels. So Chakra UI, like I mentioned, developer experience, we want it to be really smooth for you and you don't have to hard code values. So let's say you need a spacing of 40 pixels or 80 pixels. What you need to then do is to divide that by 4. So if 40 pixels divided by 4, you have 10. So instead of passing 40 pixels, you can pass just 10. They mean
Nice.
the same thing. Yeah, the same thing as 40 pixels. But remember, when you're using this, you're not appending a like a unit dimension to it. Like you're not using pixels, you're using just the raw value as it is, right? So let's make this 10. Now let's go on to building the text. Import text from Chakra UI, and then we copy this part. Yeah. So let's see what we have. Seems like our spacing is so much. So let's tone it down a bit. Yeah, let's see. Okay, let's continue. So now we notice that our text is not pure white on that screen. It's more like a, I say, it's more like a white that has some level of opacity. So
Mm-hmm.
in Chakra UI as well, we can have colors like um, white alpha. So all of these are whites that have some level of opacity, right? So they are not pure white, but they'll give us what we want, which is right here. Cool. So in terms of font size as well, let's bump this up to let me see. Let me inspect this to see what the font size is. 32 pixels. So 32 pixels should be about 3 XL in Chakra UI. It's a bit too big. Let me see, 2 XL. More like it, yeah. So now let's work on the buttons. The buttons that we have right here. First off, Chakra UI allows you to be able to have, let's say, buttons right out of the box based on the color scheme, right? So this is a purple button. So our color scheme, we're just going to use purple. This is a solid variant button. This is an outline variant button. So let's work on that. Still in our V stack, these buttons are horizontally stacked together. So we import button from Chakra UI, and then the first button reads get started. Second button reads schedule demo. Awesome. So now we need to start fixing a couple of things. Our H stack, let's give the spacing of 6, which is 24 pixels, right? 6 times 4 is 24 pixels. So the first button is we can see that it has a right icon. So in Chakra UI, you can also have buttons with icons either on the right or on the left. So since what we have is a right icon, we're going to use a right icon up, and we set it to, right now we need to have an icon. Before now, I went ahead to install React icons because we will be using a whole lot of icons here. So React icons have an icon called, let me just import it here, the chevron icon. Let me just, so I think it's called big chevron, right? Yeah, cool. So it's this big chevron right icon we're going to render into a right icon prop, right? So we are literally going to render it as components. So it's no longer yelling at us. So we need to also clean up some things. In terms of color scheme, like I mentioned, that's the purple button. So our color scheme is going to be color scheme. It's going to be purple. Right? Sweet. So also, so we are more or less done with this first button, right? We see that Chakra UI comes with hover states for your button as well.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the second button, you see there are a couple of things we need to fix. One, the variant. So let's make the variant an outline instead of a solid variant like it is. Cool. Remember, we are working towards this. So now we also want to be able to give the hover states some styles. For now, when we hover, we don't want to see this. So we go to our hover state and we make our background color transparent. Awesome. So by default, this has a border color for the radius, right? Oh, sorry, for the width. So we see that this has a border color, right? So give it a border color of Just gonna stick with my dot 600 token. This is what we have so far. So right now we can see that we've been able to style the buttons and the header. We just need to add some kind of padding at the top and at the bottom, which I'll say padding Y, so our overall layout here. So I'm going to go to the very top of my VStack, and I'm going to add a PY of let's say 28 pixels. Let's see. So this is what we have so far. Yeah,
Wow,
yeah, this is
beautiful.
what we have so far. Yeah, this is what we have so far, and it's really so much easier. I'm sure we spent a whole lot of time because I was talking and explaining
Yeah,
as I was building. But imagine if you have to just build this out like on the go without you already know the components you need to use, and when you're building all of this, it's going to take a very short time to build. And I don't know how many minutes we have left because I
yeah.
know we spent about an hour already.
Yes, we have. But really, I can see the DX. It's really amazing, and
Yeah,
like especially the ask prop, where you could have these base components, where you could tell them, no, I want you to be UL in this case, an anchor tag,
yeah,
and even a component. That's just blew my mind. I like it.
yeah, exactly.
It's
Cool,
amazing.
cool, cool, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, sure
So
thing.
this is really how to get started with Chakra UI and how to build a landing page or whatever you want to build with Chakra UI. This is
Mm-hmm.
how to go about it. I would say we have our documentation is really good. We keep on improving it, but in terms of documentation, most times it's very easy to just understand how a component works, checking the props that it contains or props that it can take, props that you can pass into components. You can see all of that at the end of each component documentation. Yeah. So that is really it. And I hope you're able to enjoy or learn a thing or two.
I love it really. Like you did an amazing job, if I could say so. Nice
Cool.
explanation, nice coding. I love it. And we had the demo
Thank
gods
you.
in our favor today, so we're
Yeah, we
good.
had them in our favor, thankfully.
Yeah. So yes, this is good. This is good. So I believe anybody that
Awesome.
haven't even used Chakra UI before, with what you've explained and with the workflow, they can build something as cool as the PlanetScale landing
Yeah,
page. Like that is not a trivial landing page. We have like
it's
test
a lot
clip
going
and
on.
gradient and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
you did it, and Chakra UI held its own or its own,
Hmm.
and it was really nice. So,
Yeah, awesome.
you mentioned earlier that you had a course, and I guess it's a Shaka Your course, right? I think anyone could use that
Oh,
course as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very good foundational course for anyone looking to get started to Chakra UI, understand various concepts like the style props we've used, how to handle responsiveness in Chakra UI, and things like that.
Nice, cool. So I'm going to link to the course as well. So,
Okay,
if anyone want to
awesome.
reach out to you, where do you hang out on social these days?
I hang out mostly on Twitter. You see me at underscore Esther Agbaje. That's
Okay.
Esther, Esther, and my surname Agbaje. So
Mm-hmm.
that's underscore Esther Agbaje on Twitter.
Definitely. I'm going to link to it. So I'll grab a couple of
Awesome.
links, maybe the PlanetScale link, Next.js, because that's what we
Yeah,
use, right? Then, of
yeah,
course,
that's what we use.
yeah, of course,
Chakra
Chakra
UI
UI and
too.
the rest. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So, any final words for those going to be watching this later?
I would love if you haven't used Chakra UI before. I would love you to give it a shot and just let me know what you think. You can send me a DM on Twitter and just let me know what you think.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Esther.
You're welcome.